Good morning, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Omaha on this pleasant late summer Sunday. So nice to see friendly faces out there and also to see the faces of guests and visitors. I should tell the guests and visitors this service is kind of a very special one. We are concluding our year of celebrating our heritage of 150 years. Because the church was founded 150 years ago on August 22nd, 1869. This past year, we've done a lot of events and programs and projects as part of this celebration. We actually started our celebration back in 2017. The kickoff event took place on October 22nd. Mary Kay Peters and Peg Pigeon organized a picnic at Elmwood Park to celebrate the laying of the cornerstone of this building by none other than President William Howard Taft. Later on, in September of this year, we celebrated the centennial of the dedication of this building. Congregants were encouraged to dress in 1918 attire. We had guest appearances by President William Howard Taft, architect Alan MacDonald, philanthropist Sarah Jocelyn, and stalwart early leader Grace Holdridge. Okay, we had people evoking their spirit more than anything. Another key event last year came on Sunday, November 11th, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day, now known as Veterans Day, signifying the end of the Great War. The highlight of that event was our member of longstanding, Bob Jones, Dr. Bob Jones, a World War II combat veteran, who recited the poem In Flanders Field, a very memorable service it was. A really highlight event came in June when we brought back the quilt that was constructed by the Women's Alliance in 1898. The quilt contains squares purchased by church members and local businesses back in that year. The quilt had been donated to the International Quilt Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they kindly arranged for us to display it in our sanctuary during the weekend of celebrating that remarkable artifact. Additionally, a new quilt was constructed under the direction of Barb Duell and Nancy Scott, and that quilt is displayed currently in our common room. Each Sunday service, we did a Heritage Minute, which recognized events, people, and important programs in our congregation's past. We have also compiled a history of our church, which has now been published and is available for purchase, by the way, titled Pillars and Dreams. Lots of other highlights have taken place, and the concluding one was last night. If you weren't here to see the triumphant revival of Newton Man Superstar, you missed a goodie. Under the direction of Ms. Kate Wigg, a combination drill sergeant and cheerleader, who did a fine job, as did lots of the cast members. I'll exclude one from that would be me. The show was originally performed 30 years ago as part of the centennial celebration of the arrival of Newton Man, probably our most famous minister. Today, we have a special activity also, celebrating the sesquicentennial of the founding of this church, and others are going to tell you more details about how we're going to do that. So, back to 1869. The Omaha of 1869 was a rough and tumble kind of place. The poet Carl Sandburg, in his poem titled Omaha, called our town Omaha the Roughneck. His personification wasn't far from the truth. Bars and brothels were commonplace and often not very far from the churches. Sandberg also saluted the grain and cattle industries of early Omaha in this excerpt. Omaha the roughneck feeds armies, eats and swears from a dirty face. Omaha works to get the world a breakfast. The year 1869 was a very important date for Omaha and for Nebraska overall. Nebraska had just been granted statehood 2 years earlier in 1867. The Civil War was only 4 years earlier. The Golden Spike was driven in Promontory Point, Utah, marking the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. The westward bound Union Pacific train had originated in Omaha. Fort Omaha was completed in that year, and the famous Native American leader Standing Bear was held prisoner there until his monumental trial in 1879. And another important founding that year was the University of Nebraska. In the year our church was founded, 16,000 people called Omaha home. Among the residents were cattlemen, railroad workers, gamblers, and a few others who made their living outside the law. The unpaved streets were often quagmires, and Carolyn will now tell you more about it through the means of a very fine poem. Well, it's interesting anyway.
Omaha's lusty past was not easy to live down. In September 1869, 1 month after our Articles of Organization were signed, the following piece appeared in Harper's Magazine, written by a gentleman describing in disgust his impressions of Omaha. Has ever been in Omaha, where rolls the dark Missouri down, where 4 strong horses scarce can draw an empty wagon through the town, where sand is blown from every mound to fill your eyes and ears and throat, where all the steamboats are aground and all the houses are afloat, where theaters are all the run and bloody scalpers come to trade, where everything is overdone and everybody is underpaid, where whiskey shops the livelong night are vending out their poison juice, where men are often pretty tight and women often pretty loose, where taverns have an anxious guest for every corner, shelf, and crack, with half the people going west and all the others coming back. If not, take heed to what I say. You'll find it just as I have found it. And if it lies upon your way, for God's sake, reader, go around it.
Well, you can see those early Unitarians had their work cut out for them. Welcome to all of you, and we're delighted to have you here for this special service honoring our church's history. We want to ask you all to sign in on the pink sheets on the clipboards at the end of the pews, please, so we have a record of who's here and helps us find out who's not and who we might need to reach out to. If you parked in the parking garage in the to the west of the church, please remember to have your parking ticket validated downstairs in the common room after the service. And speaking of, in the common room after the service, we'll have coffee hour and cake, the last of our celebrations of this 150 years. And if you're a visitor, would you please take a blue mug if you're comfortable talking with strangers, and we'll know that you are open to conversation. The hospitality team today are the sanctuary singers. They're the people with the green ribbons. So if you're a visitor and you have a question about anything, please be sure to ask them. They'll be glad to help. A couple of special announcements. One is that there is a First Steps class today for visitors in the Whitney Young Room at 11:45, and that is a way for you to find out more about us, get acquainted with this church and with Unitarian Universalism in general. There are blue sheets with announcements in the foyer, and please take one of those so you have more information about the activities that are going on inside the church and outside, many ways for you to be involved. And a special announcement from the search committee. Links have gone out for a survey to members and friends. If you don't receive a link electronically, please contact the church office and they'll get the information for you. There are paper copies of this survey available through the church office or from Kate Godfrey or Lita Masiana. And so we want this information, want everyone to participate in this survey for information to help the search committee in their search for a new pastor. And lastly, I want to point out that the flowers on the chancel table today are in memory of Barb Ross, whose contributions to this congregation we honored last night, which was the anniversary of her birth.
There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. Come on up. All right. I want to share a story with you that children could read in 1903. Do you know who Humpty Dumpty is? Yeah. If you know the poem, say it along with me. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. All right. Well, this is a story about Humpty Dumpty's son. Young Humpty didn't want to get all cracked up and scrambled like his daddy, but he was worried because he could feel his insides jiggle when he walked and played. So he went to the wise, kind, and very smart little black hen. Miss Hen knew Humpty was a good egg. She sent him to the farmer's wife. Miss Hen advised Humpty to let the farmer's wife put him into a pot of hot water so his insides would become firm and secure. The farmer's wife wrapped Humpty Dumpty in a piece of polka-dotted calico cloth, like this one that Pele has here. Pele, do you want to pass that one around so everyone can see the calico? Next, after she wrapped him in the cloth, the farmer's wife put Humpty into a pot of boiling water. What do you think would happen if you wrapped a white egg in that cloth and boiled it? The egg would boil. Anything else? So what happened was Humpty enjoyed the warm bath, and when he came out, he looked like a beautiful Easter egg. He was red with spots all over from the cloth. And he had firm insides. Humpty was so happy that his insides didn't jiggle anymore. He thanked the farmer's wife for helping, and he left to see the wide, wide world. But first, he walked out on her clothesline like a tightrope dancer. Humpty traveled east, west, north, and south. He sailed the seas, walked through all of the countries of the earth, and was a very happy egg. Sometimes he was a clown and made everyone laugh. He made everyone, young and old, happy. Sometimes he played a banjo and sang merry songs. Always he helped people and made them forget if they were sad. He filled every heart with joy. But wherever he went, in sunshine or in rain, he never forgot to sing the praises of the wise Miss Black Hen and the farmer's wife, who gave him good advice and treated him with kindness. He carried on their legacy of sharing cheer and comfort with others. All right, everyone please sing the children to their classroom.
On August 22, 1869, our forebears created this church by signing the Articles of Organization. By the way, the original Articles of Organization document is on the easel in front of me. The articles read as follows. 1, this religious organization shall be called the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. 2, the object of this church shall be united action in the study and practice of Christianity. 3, there shall be 5 trustees who shall have charge of the financial and other prudential affairs of the church, and who shall choose out of their own body a president and secretary, who shall also be treasurer, which officers shall officiate at meetings of the board and of the church. 4, there shall be a pastoral committee, which shall consist of the pastor and 4 lay members. 2 of the lay members shall go out of office annually, and their places be filled by election at the annual meeting. The duties of the committee shall be to advise with and aid the pastor in the spiritual affairs of the church. See that newcomers and transient attendants are hospitably received and properly seated. Attend to the supply of the pulpit and assist in the administration of the Lord's Supper. 5, there shall be a committee on the young, which shall consist of the pastor and superintendent and the teachers of the Sunday school. The superintendent shall be chosen annually, and the teachers be appointed by him. I always look at Dave when I say that. 6, there shall be a committee on music, which shall consist of 3 members and be chosen annually. 7, the annual meeting for the choice of officers and the transaction of other business shall be held on the first Monday in January at such hour and place as the trustees may direct. 8, it shall be the duty of the president to call special meetings at the request of 3 or more members. 9, this form of organization may be altered or amended by a vote of 2/3 of the members present at any meeting called for the purpose, in which call the proposed alterations or amendments shall be stated. And 10, any person may become a member of this church by subscribing to the above articles. Signed, Thomas Davis, President, Seward Davis, Secretary.
Prior to the adoption of the Bond of Union, a statement of belief written in 1871 was the main document by which our congregation was guided. That document attempted to show the break from Trinitarian creed and deny Calvinistic beliefs. It reads, that God is our Father and in person of undivided unity, that the inclination to worship and the sense of duty are instinctive and universal, that all men are sons of God, and that Jesus Christ is emphatically the Son of God. The Holy Spirit is an influence vouchsafed to all men and not a person, that punishment is remedial and therefore not eternal, that the ordinances are not form and therefore neither absolutely essential nor unchangeable.
From 1871 to 1891, well, the times were changing. In 1890, under Reverend Newton Mann, a reorganization took place which ultimately led to the creation of the Bond of Union, which replaced the Statement of Belief. The Bond of Union reads as follows, quote, we whose names are hereby subscribed associate ourselves together as a religious society for mutual helpfulness in right living, and for the advancement of sound morals and pure religion in the community. And we hereby pledge ourselves to bear our part in the common cause, and to care for the welfare and influence of the society, of which by this act we become members. Basing our union upon this expressed moral and religious purpose, rather than upon any dogmatic statement of belief, and emphasizing the religion of character and daily life above all creedal confessions, we invite to our membership all who are seriously drawn to us in our spirit and aims, and who desire to have with us their church home, end quote. Notable differences between the Statement of Belief written in 1871 and the Bond of Union written in 1891 include questions of belief were omitted. The Bond of Union's phrases such as right living, common cause, and religion of character leave little doubt that we are a religion of deeds, not creeds. There is a difference in gender usage. Men dropped in favor of the gender-neutral we. We see an absence of God language. And 19th century rhetorical flourishes and florid language are absent in the Bond of Union. As stated in Dave Richardson's books, Pillars and Dreams, the Bond of Union is a beautifully crafted document which remains the statement to which new members attest when they sign the membership book.
Please stand now in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 290. We'll sing the first two verses.
To put our founding into a historical context of Unitarianism as a whole, I would point out that at the time of our founding, we were part of what was called the westward movement of American Unitarianism, which was spurred by the formation of the Western Unitarian Conference in 1852 in Cincinnati, a church which was the pulpit of which was occupied by our own Newton Mann prior to coming here. The Western Conference represented a break with the older and more conservative Eastern Unitarian churches of the American Unitarian Association, as it was called at the time. The chronicles of the Western Conference were more free-thinking, and they showed their influence from Theodore Parker. Parker, considered by many of the older group as an apostate, concerned with more free thinking than more doctrinal things. The expression describing the beliefs of the Eastern Unitarian Church of the time period was, quote, the brotherhood of man, the fatherhood of God, and the neighborhood of Boston. Many more women clergy can be found in the churches of the Western Conference. The famous Iowa Sisterhood was part of this movement. At the time of our founding, it is safe to say the First Unitarian Church of Omaha may have leaned toward the Eastern view. When we look at the words of the original statement of belief you just heard and compare it with the more eloquent bond of union, you can see the transition which followed a few years later. The bond of union is much more like a mission statement. It also reflected the influence of Newton Mann, as was pointed out, and our alliance with the Western movement. The bond of union places us clearly in that camp. The two factions never formally split into two different denominations, but as the years passed, the Eastern AUA slowly transformed into a more liberal and free-thinking association, resulting in the two pretty much coming together in the early part of the 20th century. The earliest incidents of Unitarianism in Omaha actually preceded the founding of our church. The late self-proclaimed Omahaologist, some of you may remember, Harold Becker, a longtime member of this church, noted that in an early edition of the Weekly Nebraskan, that Reverend George W. Skinner, a visiting Unitarian minister, quote, will deliver 2 sermons on Sunday, June 7th, 1857. Mr. Becker dubbed the event the first Unitarian service in Omaha, a full 12 years prior to our actual founding. Thus were sown the first seeds of Unitarianism in Omaha. In his book titled Freedom Moves West, A History of the Western Unitarian Association, which was published in 1952 by Reverend Charles Lytle, who was himself a minister at this church from 1920 to 1922. He noted another event which predated the founding. In 1866, a well-known Unitarian minister, Reverend C.H. Brigham, visited and spoke in Omaha. Lytle suggests that many of the eventual signers of our Articles of Organization were on hand to welcome him to Omaha. Reverend Lytle noted that the early members were quite welcoming and to free thinking and making the shift from the statement of belief to the bond of union. A quotation from Charles Lytle. There was no opposition to liberal views among the Nebraska pioneers of New England lineage who settled in Omaha. The Davises, the Longs, Kimballs, Russells, Smiths, and Jocelyn's were among the early members. An article in Unity Magazine, a religious periodical of the time, noted that the liberals of Nebraska are as a whole very radical, having cut loose entirely from the moorings of the old theology. Some of the signers had New England roots and were familiar with Unitarianism, and others he described as well-educated free thinkers. These were the signers. This was this group of pioneering Omahans we honor today.
It's time now for the morning offering. With these gifts, we extend the work of this church in these walls and in the wider community. The Share the Plate beneficiary for the month of August is the Sienna Francis House, and the Change for Change beneficiary is our own neighborhood ministry team.
The Articles of Organization were signed by 25 people, 15 men and 10 women. Unfortunately, there is little information about some of them, especially the women, who were sometimes identified only as extensions of their husbands. When I could, I tried to provide their given names. So who were these signers? Thomas Davis, who signed as president, was Douglas County's representative to the first Legislative Assembly and a member of the City Council, an alderman, and a county commissioner. Seward B. Davis signed the articles as secretary. He worked as a machinist and was a master mason. Edward Wright. O. P. Ingalls, a maker and dealer of boots and shoes who served on the city council. George C. Hensman. He was also a boot manufacturer, and his sons made boots for O. P. Ingalls. Mrs. Mercy Hensman. Charles J. Covey. George Walcott, a civil engineer. Mrs. Amanda Wolcott. Edward E. Balch was a Civil War veteran and a teller at Omaha National Bank. His daughter, Theda, married the son of Byron Reed. Charles H. Brown was an attorney and an assistant to Edward Creighton, helping to build the Transcontinental Telegraph. During that time, Brown logged a diary, which is the only known chronicle of daily events associated with building the telegraph. He later served as county prosecuting attorney and as a member of Nebraska's Constitutional Convention, the territorial legislature, the city council, and as mayor. Mrs. George R. Smith, wife of the postmaster. Jerome B. Staring along with his wife, were members in the same house as Reverend Bond, our first minister. Sophie Erdman Rawitzer. William Wallace, a Civil War veteran, Vice President of Omaha National Bank, and President of Omaha's first Library Board. He was active in philanthropic work and was an amateur photographer who left a vast collection of photographs documenting early 20th century Omaha. Mary Grant Wallace, along with her husband William, was one of the founders of the Omaha Colony at Lake Okoboji, Iowa. Mrs. Emma Kellogg Cox. Eben K. Long, a Civil War veteran and chief clerk in the ticket office of the new Union Pacific Railroad. He became a judge and later served as city auditor and as a member of the Omaha School Board. Mary Jane Long, his wife, Elizabeth A. Long, his mother, Mrs. J.P. Bartlett, Ellen S. Landigan, William Hamburg, a clerk and hospital steward with the U.S. Army at Fort Omaha, G.B. Russell, and finally, George L. Miller, Omaha's first doctor. One of the first settlers to Omaha, he started the first medical practice, served in the territory's legislature, and was founder and editor of the Omaha Daily Herald, the precursor to the Omaha World Herald. In addition, he helped organize the first Nebraska regiment during the Civil War, incorporated the first Nebraska Medical Society, founded the Omaha Library Association, served on the Omaha School Board, was instrumental in securing the Army barracks that became Fort Omaha. He was a member of the Fire and Police Commissions and head of the Humane Society. He led the Board of Park Commissioners, creating the city's Parks and Boulevard system. And he was president of the Nebraska State Historical Society. Now please stand and join in singing hymn 121, We'll Build a Land.
We Today, we are a covenantal faith, not a creedal or doctrinal faith. And so, let us join together in a unison reading of our covenant. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the independence of all existence of which we are a part.
We conclude our celebration today by signing a document which reads, "We, the undersigned, celebrate the 150th anniversary of the founding of First Unitarian Church of Omaha. We honor the commitment of our forebears in liberal religion." We'll begin the signing with the minister, the board, and the Heritage Task Force coming forward. And we encourage members to follow us to the common room after the recessional to also sign the document.